the thing that's so annoying is the fact that it's only every so often. We've had what, 3 or 4 sprint races or something this year? Like,
So then
why?
it affects the standings. It affects, like, for example, pole position. Kevin Magnussen had a pole position, but the pole position wasn't for the like. It's just, oh,
In the
guys,
history books. So
yeah.
this is the thing. In the history books, George will be the one who started the race in P1. So he started the actual race in P1, but K-Mag's the one who's on pole. So for anyone who doesn't know or understands sprint races and they're looking back at this in like a few years, they're going to be like, how? What happened in between that time and that time? For like, it's confusing for no reason. It just adds another layer of confusion. And in a sport where the FIA can't even get things straight themselves, it's just,
Regardless of what the issue is, I think it's kind of telling that Max still fights Lewis, particularly in this way, because we've seen him go wheel to wheel with Charles. And whilst I wouldn't say Max has ever backed out of anything, but he's been quite respectful of like how he battles. And I think Lewis, the Mercedes car being stronger and Lewis being back on par with him again, I think it's traumatic for him. I think he's like, shit, I gotta get my elbows out. Like, and he's one of the things that I find very telling was his words after the end of the race. Like he was like, he knew that if he didn't back out of that corner, that they were going to crash. And he was like, well, what did he say? Um, you know, I got a time penalty and lost my front wing, but Lewis lost the race. So he knows in his head that Lewis can win. And I think that's very threatening for him. And it shows in the way he battles Lewis. A lot of people said um that like they're not supporting him now. Dude had 35,000 comments underneath his latest pictures and other comments on other pictures. 35,000 comments basically saying, I'm not supporting you anymore. What you did to Checo was wrong. Blah, blah, blah. Basically made an enemy of an entire country because Ola Mexico is ready to fire his ass, like, honestly. But I can't even respect those fans because at the end of the day, you saw all the stuff that he was pulling last year. And now that he did it to your fan and your guy, that's when you can say, oh no, I didn't even. Hi guys, welcome back to On the Chicane. You're here with me, Paris, and my lovely co-host Marium. How you doing, Maz?
I'm good.
Good, I'm glad. And today we're talking about the Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos. It was this past weekend, and honestly, it was a pretty epic race. A lot happened. I feel like Brazil is starting to be that track that always delivers. I saw a meme the other day, and it literally just had all of the 2023 dates, but every single one was Brazil. And I was like, I wouldn't mind that, you know? It's
Yeah.
like Lewis Hamilton's home race now, another one of his home races. He got made a honorary citizen of Brazil the same week. And I think, yeah, it's just a track that delivers. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think they're always, for the last few years, we've seen quite a bit of action at Interlagos. Brazil is a favorite, I think, amongst most fans. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. And surprisingly, I actually really enjoyed the sprint that happened there on Saturday. And I hate sprint races. I think most people hate sprint races. But the sprint was actually quite entertaining. And obviously so was quali. So, we had crazy weather conditions and unpredictable. So there was a lot going on this weekend, but it delivered for good racing. It was entertaining, and yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for a similar race for Abu Dhabi because it would be nice to end on a bit of a high rather than having a dull race, which Abu Dhabi sometimes can be. But yeah, I enjoyed this race this weekend.
I think the rain was like a massive thing during quali, and there was a lot of the drivers were worried about where the rain clouds were, and I think that always kind of gives it a bit of excitement because they're like, guys, 10 minutes until it rains, and then you
Yeah.
never know what's going to happen. They managed to do all of quali on soft tires, but it was still pretty damp. So I think they didn't necessarily get like the warm ups that they normally do. and the same amount of grip, and that led to the exciting situation that we had where George Russell, who was in third at the time, binned it a little bit and ended up causing a red flag during Q3 with, I think, about 6 minutes left to go or something like that. So at the time, Kevin Magnussen was on pole, and literally everybody was just like, cool, well, there's no point in them restarting quali and going out on new tires because it was already drizzling, and they would have had to go out on intermediates, and it just wouldn't have been as grippy as the softs that they had been using. So they watched the clock run out, and Kevin Magnussen ended up with his first pole position of his career. So congratulations to Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally just the craziest thing. Like, everyone was like, how's it going to fare? Is Max going to do, like, is he going to be able to put in a good lap time? Blah, blah, blah. But at the time, you had, K-Mag, who had just put in, like, his lap time. There were quite a few people who hadn't put in their lap times. So they were still running on Q2 times. And yeah, somehow, George, being P3, ended up winning it, as Paris said, and Kevin was on pole. It was just the craziest thing. Like, I think it was amazing because we got to see all of their reactions, and like hearing Kevin's radio and like his race engineer being like, okay, like Kevin was like, so where are we? Like, not really expecting to have much of a response, and his race engineer was like, you're P1, mate. And he was like, what? I can't believe I can't believe how I'm feeling right now. And I think just for like all of us who have been following Formula One for a while and seeing K-Mag's career, and like he wasn't even in F1 at the beginning of the year because of the whole theme Nikita Mazepin situation, but it was just so heartwarming, that moment for like Haas, Gunther. It was like, was it his birthday or his birthday weekend or something?
I think it was Gene Haas's birthday weekend. Gene Haas was turning 70, so Gunther was like on the pit wall calling Gene Haas like, happy birthday, by the way, we just got pole.
Crazy. Yeah, it was just a really nice moment. And then, yeah, I mean, really unexpected. I think the only thing that kind of threw a spanner in the works was the fact that it was a sprint weekend. So it was like, okay, you're starting on pole for the sprint, but not the actual race. So that kind of took away from it a little bit. And it's
I
like,
think it does because usually you get like a crazy qualifying like that and it messes up the race, like in a good way, not a bad way. You can't have that fun element, that unpredictable element for the race because by the time you do the sprint, it almost unshuffles the pack again. Like it just puts everybody back into the right order. And I think that is, for me, one of the reasons why sprint races are bullcrap and we need to get rid of them. Or at least change the format so that we have nothing to do with the race weekend in a sense. I don't know. It's just, I don't think that there's enough jeopardy with sprint races. I think it does the opposite. It's almost like having half a race already puts people in a good position for the race.
yeah. To be honest, it just really confuses me because I'm like, so you have qualifying to set up the order for the sprint race, but the sprint race sets up the order for the actual race. So then essentially, like, why are we doing these? Like, it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, why do we even have the sprint race? What does it actually do?
Yeah, it's just like
How does
an
it
added step
contribute?
for no
Yeah,
reason.
for no reason. And the thing is, the thing that's so annoying is the fact that it's only every so often. We've had what, 3 or 4 sprint races or something this year? Like,
So then
why?
it affects the standings. It affects, like, for example, pole position. Kevin Magnussen had a pole position, but the pole position wasn't for the like. It's just, oh,
In the
guys,
history books.
yeah,
So this is the thing. In the history books, George will be the one who started the race in P1. So he started the actual race in P1, but K-Mag's the one who's on pole. So for anyone who doesn't know or understands sprint races and they're looking back at this in like a few years, they're going to be like, how? What happened in between that time and that time? For like, it's confusing for no reason. It just adds another layer of confusion. And in a sport where the FIA can't even get things straight themselves, it's just why? What's the need for the further added complications when they're not needed?
So 2 years into sprint races, and I'm still not feeling it, guys. I am not feeling it. And I think Kevin Magnussen probably is saying, I'm not feeling it either, because look at all his hard work that was undone in 30 minutes on Saturday. Hard work. But to be fair, right, to be fair to him, okay, let's actually talk about K-Mag for a second. Like you said, he wasn't in Formula One last year. He was replaced by a certain Russian man that definitely did not deserve his seat. And he didn't have the best time in Haas beforehand with all that trouble that he was having, and they started off when they first started on a great car, and it just went downhill from there. So this little mini redemption that he got, and allowing himself to put in a good lap, because he had to be in that position in order to secure the pole position. It could have been Max Verstappen who went out first and set the fastest time, and it wasn't. It was him. So as much as it was crazy fluky circumstances, similar to what I said with George, like beginning of the year when he had all those crazy flukes of like being on the podium, you have to be in that position to get the podium. You have to be in that position to get the pole position.
Yeah, it's a fair point. But yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate your point and just say I don't like sprint races. But yeah, so that being said, we had quali, K-Mag was on pole. Then we had the sprint the following day, which again kind of set things up for the race. And this time, George was on pole. And that was very exciting because, it's just a big moment for Mercedes because they have, obviously, it's well known that everyone that they struggled this year. So for Mercedes to be having one of their drivers, their new driver, in pole, and then Sainz, who qualified second, had was it a 5-place grid penalty? For what was it, a new PU?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Which promoted Lewis up to second. So it was Mercedes' first 1-2 of the season. So it's just a big moment because it's like is Mercedes back? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I think, they were arguing or saying that it was a track specific, but they've been slowly getting stronger, haven't they? And the fact that they had the 1-2, as we said, like a lot of the drivers didn't set times on Friday during quali. So Lewis started the sprint race 8th and then ended up 3rd, and even just that little drive, like being able to get past the other cars. I mean, he did it last year. He did that amazing masterclass, and again, he had to do it again this year. And you just think, like, imagine if he had set a time in qualifying where he might have been, because him and George were pretty strong this weekend.
It reminds me of, I think, 2018, where Ferrari started off the season really strong and it looked like Mercedes were having issues, and then slowly, like, Ferrari kind of dropped here and the Mercedes are like up here. So yeah, I mean, Mercedes have made a massive improvement and a massive comeback this year, considering where they were and considering where Lewis was as well. It wasn't specific to George because George was getting the various like podiums or whatever, but Lewis was really struggling. But he seems to kind of fix that somehow. So yeah, I mean,
correction slightly. He wasn't struggling, he was testing things out. But it was cool, and he had really bad luck. But he really did not get he got the short end of the stick for the first half of the year season, regardless of which way you word it, kind of thing.
I guess just a quick thing to note is okay, well, so George qualified in pole position, managed to hold on, and as I'm sure you all know, won the race. So it was a massive moment for George. It was a really close drive between George and Lewis. There's other things that happened which we will get onto, but it was a really close moment where it was kind of like, does Mercedes kind of choose George and let him go for his first win, because obviously it's a major moment for him? Or do they like maybe give some team orders? Because Lewis, this is the first time in however many years that he is yet to win a race. So we've got one race left of the season, and it's kind of like, is that record gonna, like, what's happening to that record?
I think there's a slight pressure on Lewis to like get this record done, but I genuinely think he doesn't give a shit. And I'm kind of happy for him if he does it, because I think he'd be the first person to like, he's been mentoring George this year. I mean, behind closed doors, we always say who the hell knows what's happening. But in to the rest of to the public, people try and pit him against George and like say like, oh, maybe they should have done team orders to protect Lewis's legacy. Lewis would have hated to have won a race like that, and he'd rather like George win and get his first win and be proud of his boy rather than like take a race away from him just so he can protect his. He's he's not going to want to have that stat on his record. He wants his win to be his win, I think.
Yeah, I mean, fair point. It was just quite interesting to see, and
Yeah,
a bit
people
of
were
a,
saying it. I think people were saying it, and even George, like himself, he was like, "Guys, is it team orders or are we free to race?" You know, like
yeah,
he's questioning it because there is loads of teams that would do that.
yeah, definitely. Like, yeah. Anyway, so obviously, major moment for George for winning his first race. Kind of just proving what everyone already knew, which is that he is literally a future world champion. Like, you can see that George has got it in him. He has been so good this whole season. He's had a few bad races in the second half of the season, but he, like, the first half, he was very consistent. That everyone was calling him Mr. Saturday because he was like consistently in the top five. Like, he's, I mean, this win is long overdue, and I was really happy for him. And you could see what it meant to him. Obviously, he had the tears and stuff afterwards, and it was just a pretty amazing moment. So yeah, very happy for George. But I guess talking of his teammate Lewis, there was an incident. um, an incident
Yes,
between,
there was an incident.
yeah, between Lewis and Max, which could have been avoided. And it was kind of a bit reminiscent of last year's racing between the two. And it kind of almost brought everything flooding back, and it was almost like a moment of, this is still happening. Like, this is still a thing. Like, maybe there's some bitterness in there, I don't know. But yeah, do you want to maybe explain what happened?
So Lewis was going up against Max and about to overtake him, and they tussled for a few corners. And during that, um, in the first lap, I think was it the first lap this happened, or like this? It was early
It
and
was
very early.
yeah.
I think it was the first lap or within the first few laps. Um, and yeah, Lewis and Max just came together. But I think one of the things when I was first watching it, I was like, okay, cool. Like Lewis is ahead. Like Max should kind of back out a little bit, but has Lewis left him enough space? And so that was my immediate thought. But watching it back again, like you see that Lewis kind of had the line. So it's like if somebody has the apex, as all of Max Verstappen fans were saying for the whole of Silverstone last year, you know, what are you supposed to do? Like he it's on it as well. It was on a chicane. So it's not even like if you kind of take it at one angle, you're kind of forced into that to take both corners in that way. And I think you know, the stewards actually like viewed it and gave Max a 5 second penalty. So it's good to see that Max actually did get a penalty for once. But I think regardless of what the issue is, I think it's kind of telling that Max still fights Lewis, particularly in this way, because we've seen him go wheel to wheel with Charles. And whilst I wouldn't say Max has ever backed out of anything, but he's been quite respectful of like how he battles. And I think Lewis, you know, the Mercedes car being stronger and Lewis being back on par with him again, I think it's traumatic for him. I think he's like, shit, I gotta get my elbows out. Like, and he's one of the things that I find very telling was his words after the end of the race. Like he was like, he knew that if he didn't back out of that corner, that they were going to crash. And he was like, well, what did he say? You know, I got a time penalty and lost my front wing, but Lewis lost the race. So he knows in his head that Lewis can win. And I think that's very threatening for him. And it shows in the way he battles Lewis. Like, to me, that's like, I don't see Charles and them man as a threat. And it makes sense because they haven't been a threat this year. Like, for example, I was saying this before before we started recording. Lando Norris also went up against Max in the race, and Max was about to overtake him, and he just bombed into the pits. Yeah, he's probably had the box call or whatever, but I've never seen this guy race Max. I've never seen this guy barely race friggin' anyone. Like he's had a few on track wheel to wheels, but honestly, like Lando kind of just puts it up in a really good position for quality and then kind of maintains that position during the race through like strategy and stuff. Like I'd say he's not a massive wheel to wheel racer. He's more of a strategic racer and really fast paced. But it means that he doesn't ever go up against Max. Like he doesn't really anytime has had to go up against Max, or he always like, oh yeah, well, you know, my tires, like he never actually goes up against Max. And I think in Max's head, he's like, I'm clear of all these guys. I don't have to battle Ocon. Ocon's way back where. I don't have to battle Norris. Norris never fights me. Charles is the only one that fights him. And I think with Charles, he has like a certain level of respect for it. So the only other person that really fights him is Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis and George, I would say. I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe it's like the just this ongoing rivalry between Red Bull and Mercedes. I don't know. But I do see what you're saying. Seems to be some sort of level of, I guess you could maybe call it a threat between him and when it comes to Lewis. So yeah, that move was definitely uncalled for. It was quite what's the word? Quite there was quite a difference of opinion in my work group chat because some people were saying like Max shouldn't be penalised and Lewis should be penalised, and saying that it was Lewis's fault. But I think obviously the stewards awarding Max a penalty for probably like the fifth time in his life was quite telling of who was to blame. But yeah, it just kind of showed where Max's head is at. But then further to that, there was another incident with Max a little bit later on in the race with his own teammate. So I feel like despite the fact that he's won the title and Red Bull have won the Constructors' Championship, Max is still kind of playing games and it doesn't really make sense. And it just goes to show that he's not. The thing is, every time Max starts to grow on me just a little bit, I'm just like, okay, he deserves respect. Okay, he's doing well. Okay, he's a good driver. Okay, I'm never going to say that he's not a good driver because he is, but you know, he starts to earn my respect a little bit. Something happens and it all just disappears. And this time it was what happened with his teammate.
I'm happy for you that you can say that you have respect for Max, but like I said, everybody always says to me, "Oh, like why don't you guys talk about Max? Why don't you like Max?" Blah, blah, blah. This is why. This is the reason why I do not rate Max Verstappen. Like, and to be honest, let's rewind it a little bit and like actually get into what really happened in that whole scenario. So you've got the whole race and it comes up to like lap 60, let's say. It's coming to the end of the race. The Russell's gone. Russell's off. Like he's kind of blasted through and gone up there. And you've got Checo who's kind of maybe around like fifth, I think, fifth or sixth. And Max is whatever position he is. So if Checo's fifth, Max is sixth. If Checo's sixth, Max is seventh. So they're like right next to each other. And Alonso's ahead of Checo. Now, Max, because of the whole situation throughout the race, Max had slightly fresher tyres and Checo's on slightly older tyres. So, to Max's benefit, I don't know what you want to call it, He's probably thinking like, let me pass Checo. I've got fresher tires. Let me catch these guys. We have a fast car. We should be able to catch up with the Alpine and overtake them. So it is relayed to Checo that let Max through, or don't. I think he was told on the radio, don't defend against Max. So when Max is coming past you, don't defend against him in the sense of like let him through. And if you guys are next to each other at the end, so if you don't drop further back, or if Max can't overtake, essentially, if you guys are next to each other at the end of the race, you can swap back. Now, what I've found out is that that same message was not relayed to Max, and I think that is a little bit important because that's a fuck up on Red Bull's part. Like Max was told, go get Alonso. He wasn't told if you can't get Alonso, Perez, you have to get like switch back with Perez. So going into it, he doesn't have the mindset necessarily that he has to switch back. However, you are a driver and you know that your teammate, you've got the championship, you've got the constructors championship, and you know that your teammate could do with a few points. And similar to Lewis, like I said, I don't think Checo wants to necessarily like win things in that way. He would rather win it on track. However, this is a scenario where you've got two teammates in the exact same position. So switching them around literally doesn't make that much difference. It just gives your teammate an extra few points. It's not like he's like, you know, I don't know. It's not the type of sport where if they like both hold Leclerc down, they can like pummel him and get in extra points that way. Like it's literally just something very similar, in that they're in the same position and he can switch. So yeah, I get that he might not have had that in his intentions, like when he first drove past Checo. But being the bigger man, like being the better driver and knowing what your teammate has done for you, when that order came, his reaction was disgusting.
Yeah, I think it's literally just about being a team player. Like, you know what this means for your teammate. He's literally on par with Charles for the second place in the championship. They're literally neck on neck, same points. If you gave this place back, he would have those extra few points to potentially convert that into more points in the next race and to bring home second. How amazing would that be for your team to have, you know, a 1-2 in the championship, and also having won the constructors championship? Like, it would be amazing, like, to have that on your record. But no, the thought process doesn't go through his mind. As you said, his reaction was disgusting, where he was like, I'm not giving the place back. I have my reasons. I told you this last year. We've discussed this already. I'm not giving the place back. What is that mentality? It makes no sense, because yes, I get it. If it's imperative to your championship or your race, or you're racing someone who's in a different team, I get it. But you're not in contention with Perez for anything. So
And
why?
he weren't even winning. Like the thing for me as well was like, it's not even like this was for podium places or anything. Like this was literally just for shits and giggles. And he couldn't even do it for that.
Yeah. So yeah, going back to what you first said about, like, we get so many people always saying to us, I get DMs, we get YouTube comments, we get so many people saying to us, why don't you talk about Max? Like, Max did this in this race, why don't you mention it? We don't talk about him because he has never shown that he gives other people respect. He doesn't respect his teammates. He doesn't respect other drivers on the grid. He's just a very selfish driver who has had a shitload of, you know, maybe the wrong role models in his life. He's had issues with his dad. He's definitely got daddy issues. He's got like Horner and Helmut Marko there, like, God knows what they're saying to him. Like, he doesn't have, I don't think, the best people around him to kind of show him how to be a team player or a good sportsman. So it's difficult for us, because even though he has his good moments, he has good moments, he has good races. Like I said, I respect that he actually has matured as a driver on track, where, again, despite this situation that happened with Lewis, like, he's kind of learned how to race respectfully against other drivers. But every time my respect for him kind of like grows a little bit, and I'm like, okay, he's actually learning, he's maturing, something like this happens, and I'm just like, nah, like you just lost it. So
And I say it time and time again, I am the type of person, I cannot rate a sports person if they don't have integrity on and off the track. Like,
yeah,
I am not a person who can separate that. And I try to like value people in life the way I value myself and the standards I have in life. And I don't care like if people say, well, you should support Max because he's a great driver. That's you. You can support Max. If you want to support a person who doesn't stand up against racism, who like feels it's okay to disrespect the 7-time world champion, like that's you. And cool, do your thing. Like, I am not telling you not to do that, but don't tell me who I can support. Like, it's just that's just the way I am. I think as well, a lot of it comes down to a lot of people said um that like they're not supporting him now. Dude had 35,000 comments underneath his latest pictures and other comments on other pictures. 35,000 comments basically saying, I'm not supporting you anymore. What you did to Checo was wrong, blah, blah, blah. Basically made an enemy of an entire country because all of Mexico is ready to fire his ass, like, honestly. But I can't even respect those fans because at the end of the day, you saw all the stuff that he was pulling last year. And now that he did it to your fan and your guy, that's when you can say, oh no, I didn't even add to the comments. I didn't even say a word because I didn't have to. Like, I've been known this. We've been talking about this for over a year. Like, even before we started this YouTube channel, like, I already knew what the deal was with Max. I remember when Max came into the sport at 17 years old, and I thought he was the shit. I was like, look at this guy. I was telling my family, I was like, look at this guy coming through. He's going to be amazing. Within like a year or two, I was like, nah, forget it. I don't even care if you're amazing. You have such a bad attitude. From back then,
yeah,
when he was like 17, 18, I cannot personally get behind somebody like that. And if you are saying that now that you've seen what he done to Checo, now is the time where you're like, oh, he's a bad sport, you have not been paying attention. And yeah,
yeah.
I'm talking to all the people who were supporting him and now they're not supporting him. You were not paying attention. And yeah, you really and truly, you still like him. You don't care.
I feel like enough said.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was great. Like it's hard. It's so hard for us as content creators where we constantly get comments of people saying, why don't you support Max? Why don't you talk about Max? Blah blah blah. We would if we could, but we can't because of all those reasons as aforementioned. Like he's just not, he doesn't seem like he's a very nice person. And yeah, I don't know. I can't, like Paris said, I can't really get on board with someone who just has a bit of an attitude. Like he has an attitude about everything. And I'm kind of over it to be honest. So yeah. Anyway,
In other news, in Ferrari land, so I think shout out, like, give dues um give dues where they're necessary. Charles also had an amazing run because he like spun out at the beginning of the race. I thought he was out. Like, I was like, oh, he's done for the race, but managed to save it and not like completely bin it. So he was like dead last, I think, after that. Or at least like 18th or something like that. He was right at the back. And he managed to come back and take it to like P4.
yeah, impeccable comeback. Maybe like Interlagos is just the track where people just make their comebacks through the grid. Because yeah, so they had a shunt with Lando at the beginning of the race. Lando actually and eventually ended up retiring, but Charles, like he fully went into the wall. Looked like he was out, managed to bring his car back on track, went into the pits, changed his front nose, and then came back and yeah, climbed up the grid. Um, I feel like because of everything that was going on with George and stuff, like it wasn't really spoken about much, and all the other drama that was going on. But it was a really solid drive from Charles to just be able to do what he needed to do, put his head down, get in there. So again, for the second place in the championship this year, like it was a really good drive for him to put himself up there, get those points for him to go into the next race level with Perez. So yeah, incredible driving and to be honest, a really good weekend for Ferrari. And it was just so nice for me to see because we had Carlos
Sign.
on the podium in
Yeah.
P3, and then
And he
Leclerc.
remember he had a five place grid penalty for the race, so he had to also like get himself up there as well into podium positions. Um, so both of the Ferraris and both of the Mercedes managed to beat out both of the Red Bulls. Yes, Max had a 5 second time penalty, but Perez didn't, and just had a weaker race.
Yeah, so pretty strong and solid weekend for Mercedes and Ferrari, and I'm really hoping we can continue that as we go into the last race of the season. So, on that note, give me your winners and losers of the weekend.
I'm gonna go for my loser of the weekend being Maximilian, whatever his middle name is, Verstappen. I think that was terrible form for him, like the way he showed his ass and like basically kind of proved everybody's point that he's still a childish person that hold grudges. Also, what even was the grudge? Like, so people are saying Monaco. Sorry, there is so much more. We could do a whole episode just about this whole little scenario because people are saying that it goes back to Monaco when Perez binned it in quali. And he was like P3. He wasn't even going up for like a podium, but he was Max was improving on his lap time, and Perez binned it because at the time he was ahead of him, and people are saying that he did that on purpose. Why would you do that in Monaco? Like, it's not even for championship points or like championship position. It's for a random P3 in Monaco. Like, I genuinely feel like that is just the most biggest nonsense. People are like pulling up the telemetry and being like, look at the throttle from like this lap to that lap. Sometimes, guys, you fuck up on the throttle. You want it to be the same, exact same every single lap, but sometimes you mess it up. Like, I cannot imagine Perez being like, yeah, F you Verstappen, I'm gonna put it in the wall. So if it was that, even if he thought, like, even if Perez didn't do that, but he thought that that was the case. You know what I mean? Like, even if Perez didn't actually try and cause a crash on purpose, even if he just thought it and it was the premise was, well, I don't really care because I thought that that's what you were doing. Where's the logic? Where is the logic? There's no logic. So I don't understand what the catalyst could have been for him to be like, I told you guys from last summer, I'm not doing this. Like, absolute nonsense. You just showed your ass, mate. You just showed your ass. And you did lose a lot of fans.
Fair. Paris has
So
got a lot to say, by the way, guys.
clearly,
A
I'm just
lot
like
to
leaving Marium stunned every sentence, like monologue, monologue, monologue.
No, I love it.
But yeah, who was your loser of the weekend?
I'm gonna give it to Lando, just because like that incident with Charles was just a bit stupid, and he DNF'd, and I mean he had a shit weekend anyway because he had food poisoning, I believe, so he wasn't even at track on Thursday. Managed to make it there on Friday and Saturday, and apparently he wasn't feeling the greatest throughout the weekend. But also I'm not really Lando's biggest fan, like, so Lando, he just
I think that's really fair points, actually. Yeah, he didn't have the best weekend, did he? And I want to see a lot more from Lando next year. Like, I really want to see him come into his position at McLaren. You know, it's going to be him and Piastri. Piastri is obviously a rookie, so I'm really kind of looking to see Lando step up now and stop kind of getting down on himself and just doing that kind of really weird human thing that he does and really excel and push himself.
yeah, I think you're right. It's like you said earlier, he kind of qualifies in a decent-ish position and then just kind of maintains that for the race. So just a bit more from him, I think, would be quite nice. Who's your winner of the weekend?
My winner is going to be Mr. Consistency, Mr. Saturday, Mr. Tory Party PR man, whatever you want to call him. I just think that he's just got these big blue eyes and so sweet. Yeah, Mr. George Russell. I think he's well deserving of his position at Mercedes. I don't ascribe to any of the tales about like the woes between him and Lewis, and I think that he is really just going to make the most of that drive that he has. What about you?
I know we try and keep it different and try to go for different winners and losers, but I have to give it to George as well. Like, long time coming. He's shown that and I mean, there were a lot of people that were kind of a bit like, we knew that George was going to get the Mercedes seat, but there were a lot of people that were kind of like, is it the right time? Is he still a bit much like a bit of a rookie? Like, but he's kind of come into the team and just proven himself weekend after weekend. He's had a few bad incidents. He's had a few bad, you know, scenarios kind of play out, but like so well deserved. And he's a good guy. He's a team player. He looks up to Lewis. Obviously has a lot to learn from him. So yeah, I'm just really happy for him, and just his reaction was just so cute. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the future holds for him as well.
I love the way he wears his emotions on his sleeve. Like if he's gonna cry, he's gonna cry. He's gonna stand there and do his. And he did like the hand on the heart thing that Lewis always does, and I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I too can't wait to see what comes from George next year. But next race, what have we got, and what have we got to look forward to, or not look forward to in a sense?
I mean, it's Abu Dhabi. It's always like, I don't think it should be the last race of the season because I don't think the circuit's the most exciting. I mean, it offers some action considering what happened in Abu Dhabi last year, but I wouldn't I wouldn't place it as the last race of the season. And it might not be for much longer because I think F1 are looking at plans to switch up their calendar so that they race in similar regions before flying off to different parts of the world, because they do like Australia and then Bahrain and then go elsewhere and then come back to the Middle East, which makes no sense. So I think they are looking to kind of change their calendar a little bit like that. So it might not be the last race of the season for much longer. But yeah, I mean, the championship's already been decided, constructors has already been decided. We are waiting to find out who's going to take P2. Leclerc and Perez are going into it level, just like last year with Lewis and Verstappen. So it'll be interesting to see who can kind of pull off the best strategy. Is it going to be Red Bull? Is it going to be Ferrari? Are there going to be Ferrari pit stop fuck ups? Are Red Bull going to manage to like maintain their records and pull off amazing pit stops? Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it should be, for that reason only, for that competition, I think it's going to be quite a thrilling race, and I am looking forward to it. But also,
What's your predictions though? Do you think anything interesting is going to really happen?
I want to say, I don't know. I don't want to like jinx it and say something's going to happen and for something bad to happen, but I'm just really hoping for close competition between Checo and Leclerc. I think that should be really
I
interesting.
think that would be good because they're both also quite feisty drivers. They like to get into it. They both know how to like attack and defend, and I think that could prove to be some really, if they end up on the same section of the circuit, I would love to see that. I mean, generally, I think you're right. Like Abu Dhabi is not the greatest race. Last year, it was a bit of a fluke because of the safety car, and actually, it's not a track that actually even really gets safety cars very often. I think there's only been like three in the last 10 years or something like that. It's quite a boring-ish track, to be honest. So to be honest, I think it's going to be a standardish race, honestly. I think
Yeah,
unless something dramatic happens.
I guess all we can do is wait and see.
Yeah. Also, it's going to be a lot of drivers' last race.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drivers. So you're going to have Mick Schumacher probably. It has yet to be announced, but it's like 99.9% certain that Hulkenberg is going to be driving for Haas next year. And Daniel Ricciardo supposedly is going to be a Red Bull reserve driver plus ambassador, but that's not happening. Ooh, where's he going? Tell us.
No, that might be happening. I don't know. Just heard rumors about him going to Mercedes as
Oh,
a reserve, but I don't know. But I don't know what's happening. I don't know anything. Uh,
and Vettel,
Vettel, it's Seb's last race.
and it's
Um,
Seb's last race ever. If you haven't listened to his Beyond the Grid episode, because it's actually really good.
yeah, I will definitely check that out. But yeah, Seb's last race. It's going to be a very emotional one for all the Seb fans out there, Aston Martin fans. Yeah, it's gonna be weird not having him in F1, but I mean, I think he's making the smart decision for his family and for his own personal life. So I'm happy for him. So yeah, I guess for the penultimate time this season, we're signing off.
Yeah,
And
where you going, Mass?
just for the penultimate time on the race reviews. But yeah, as always, guys, please follow, like, share, subscribe, all of that jazz. Find us on Twitter. I haven't been live tweeting the last several races because I've been working every race weekend, but Paris is holding it down for us. So join us on Twitter for the race on Sunday as well. We're on Instagram. How active that is questionable. But yeah, find us, share all of that. We are at On the Chicane on every channel. And yeah, we'll catch you next time.
Bye, guys.